to the city of Pflugerville for providing this opportunity for health and wellness for my people. I'm AJ Mays, owner and operator of Mays Fitness LLC, and that's my Pflugerville.
Well, I'm here volunteering for Arbor Day specifically because I just stumbled on the opportunity to take the Citizen Forester training class offered through Parks and Rec. I'm always checking what Parks and Rec is doing because they offer really great ways to get involved in the community. It's given me inspiration, it's something I'm passionate about. So I would really encourage other people in the community to get involved and volunteer as well. I think it's a great use of your time because the things that we enjoy that make Pflugerville such a nice community.
Priorities are as we move forward with the budget process. There's also a lot of opportunities during the years with master plans and the biennial resident survey for getting feedback from the citizens. I do want to point out some I would call them upgrades, but changes from last year to this year. We did change the format a little bit, and we decided that grouping our information by funds would kind of help the document flow a little bit better, especially the general fund, because last year we had the fund in one place but all the departments in another. So we've changed that and streamlined that. I do think that it flows a lot better this year. We took your suggestion on the personnel summary and we added a change column. Hopefully that's helpful in kind of showing the changes that occurred by department. There is also a more detailed all-fund summary, and so the all-fund summary is closer to the front of the document, but it just has more detail in it and ties a little better to the fund pages. There are 3 new funds in this year's budget. The Monarch Fund is a new enterprise fund, and it is our new recreation center. There is a utility debt service fund. This fund comes from just trying to split out the debt from the water and wastewater operating fund. We actually created the fund during fiscal 26 and did a budget amendment to move amounts into it, and now this is the first time that it's actually showing up in the budget document. And then we also added a tourism public improvement district. I do want to talk about this tax notice because I know it's confusing the way it reads. This is the legal requirement that we have to put in the beginning of the budget document. And basically it states, what is your change from budget year to budget year? Well, our change from budget to budget is $385,000. If we were gaining all of the new property value that is available, that would be the $1.7 million. But because we are using quite a bit of fund balance in the debt service fund to keep that rate close to where we have been in the last several years, we're not actually gaining all of the new value. And so that's why it reads very weird, but it is the direct language straight out of the legislature code. And so just wanted to point that out. So the appraised taxable value is certified. So this is the first year in a very long time that we're actually seeing total taxable values going down. So we're seeing about a $65 million reduction year over year in total taxable appraised value. We are gaining $321 million from new properties. 74% of that is residential, the rest is commercial. We did see a 20 million increase in TERS captured value. That just means that of the increase in value, 20 million of it is going over into the TERS fund, not into the general fund and debt service fund. We did see a loss in personal property exemption of around 74 million. That is a new law that went into effect for this budget year.
I have a quick question. I don't know if the appraisal district gives you this kind of breakdown, but is it that everyone's seeing that decline in property valuation, or are there pockets that are seeing it differently? I mean, obviously the people who are going to qualify under the property exemption, they're going to see that.
Right.
But is that kind of decline in property valuation driven by that, or is it just overall?
It's not overall. I do have a slide that kind of talks about the difference between residential and commercial. If I can address that when we get to that slide, because there is a difference between residential and commercial.
Okay.
And so we can kind of touch on that when we get to that point. Any other questions on this slide, though? Okay. Just want to talk about the tax rate since we're going to be talking.
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so about the laws in property exemption, what is that about? Can you?
It is just a new law that allows, I believe, for up to 125,000 per property to be able to claim this personal. It's a personal property exemption.
Okay.
There was also, and I can't remember the exact language, there was also something related to age, that after you hit a certain age that you could claim, it would increase your exemption. So, and that happened last
But
year.
it is something, it is a new law. So this is, new exemptions that weren't on the books last year.
Okay.
Which all gets factored into the calculation of the tax rate, but it is property taxable value that we did lose. On the tax rate side, we do talk about several types of tax rates. The M&O tax rate, the maintenance operations, is mainly the one that we refer to when we're talking about the general fund. And then we have the interest and sinking tax rate, which is your debt service tax rate. We'll talk about no new revenue rate, which is basically the rate that is calculated when it's looking at the same properties year over year. So basically, like if values went down, then you're probably going to see that no new revenue rate increase a little bit because it's all a calculation of same properties year over year. The voter approval rate is on the maintenance and operation side. It's the no new revenue maintenance and operation rate times the 1.35%, which we're allowed to go up to without a vote. So that's your voter approval rate. These are just some calculations for you on how we get to those rates. On the property tax revenue M&O, so did I skip one? Oh,
There you
okay.
go. You're missing now.
Oh, well, let's talk about this. So these are the calculated rates. So we got the information. We get appraisal values from Williamson and Travis. We have a little bit in Williamson. All this is sent over to the Travis County Truth and Taxation Department, and they actually run our calculations. So we ended up with a voter approval rate of 54.36, which is a combination of the voter approval M&O rate at 26.10 plus the calculated debt rate at 28.26. And so that's how we get to the 54.36. This is also the proposed rate that council did approve on August 11th, and there will be notices that go out on this particular rate. Council can approve a rate below this at the adoption time, but they can't approve anything over it. So whatever they've proposed as the rate, they cannot go over that rate. The no new revenue rate as it is calculated is 54.07, and the no new revenue M&O rate, which is the general fund portion, is 25.23. So in the general fund, we budgeted last year 29.2 million. Our projection is below that. We're looking at about 28.8. And this is just due to protests and adjustments. So our budget will always include a piece of value that is still under protest. And so we get fed an estimated value from the appraisal district, and we usually go with their estimated value. This year, there may have been, additional adjustments that brought that amount down, and so we're actually looking at a little less than budgeted by the end of the fiscal year. The proposed is 30,155,000, which is 1.3 million over that projected fiscal 26 amount, and it is calculated based on the voter approval rate. So when we look at the average homestead values, you can see that average taxable and median taxable year over year has actually decreased. And so when you apply the proposed rate from fiscal 26 and fiscal 27, you actually see a decrease annually of about $54. The mayor asked a great question, so we went out and found the answer. We have about 50% of homesteads that are below the median value. So that just kind of gives you a glimpse into how many homes will actually be affected by the decrease in the value. This is just a graph that's comparing the rates with the taxable homestead, and so you can see as the values drop a little bit, you're going to see that rate dip up a little bit, and so there is a correlation between the values and the rate. This is the slide. We do try to look at residential and commercial separately just to kind of see what that trend is. So we are seeing a 5% increase on commercial. So you're seeing commercial go up a little bit. We are looking at about a 2% decrease in residential. To answer your question, like across residential, I think the median kind of talks about that and the average kind of talks about that. Obviously, they're both down. Will some residential see an increase? Maybe, probably. Like, I don't have the detail on all of that, but in general, residential is going down. So, we are seeing a decrease in that. Thank you. This is just a benchmark comparison. These are traditionally the cities we kind of benchmark ourselves against. One thing we added this year to this slide is those cities that are actually using some sales tax to reduce their property tax. And when I say that, I mean they actually have a dedicated portion of their sales tax that is dedicated to property tax. They're not just taking some of their general fund sales tax and applying it against their property tax. So just want to be clear with that. So now we get into just kind of all funds, some of the changes in this budget. The general fund or any fund, our target is whatever the fund balance policy is. The budget is built on the voter approval rate. Sales tax projections have been very conservative, and we'll talk about that in a future slide. The utility revenue is based on study recommendations, so we have been going through a utility rate study over the last many months, and we have presented to council numerous times on what those rates are going to look like. There's a new rate structure being recommended, and so all of those things have been discussed. This budget is based on those recommendations. Recreational increase based on estimated memberships and proposed fees. So in general, obviously recreation revenue is more in this budget, but not in the general fund. On the expenditure side, general fund is seeing a reduction in 17 positions, utility fund 10 positions, but our Monarch Fund got an increase of 123 new positions. 2 of those are new full-time positions, and the rest of them are all part-time. We do have a 3% cost of living increase built in, and also a market increase for the police department step plan. On the health insurance, we have an 8% increase built in. We're doing an RFP right now for health insurance, and so we won't really know where our insurance falls out until October. We have added occupancy costs for all of the new facilities that will be coming online in fiscal 27. So between City Hall, the new recreation center, our new public works complex, we also have a wastewater treatment plant and the expansion of the water treatment plant. So we have a lot of new expansion facilities coming online in 2027. On the debt service side, in general fund, our debt will be, the annual debt amount is 43.6. The utility is actually falling in line with the same amount. And like I said at the meeting the other night, I did check this number and it really is the same, which seems odd. The utility side is an estimate though, because with our WIFIA funding, what's unique and beneficial about the WIFIA funding is that you don't start paying the principal amounts on your debt until you have drawn down those amounts. So it's not like a traditional bond where you go out and issue $156 million and you receive $156 million. We actually don't receive our WIFIA funding until we request reimbursement. And until that drawdown is done, that amount of principal is not added to our amortization schedule, if that makes sense. So our debt going forward is always changing because as we draw down almost every month. And so that amortization schedule is changing every single month. What we have based in our rate model is a projection of when we think those drawdowns are going to happen. So we have to make some sort of projection on where we think those drawdowns are going to happen. There is no new debt proposed in this budget. This is just a very high-level, quick snapshot. Total expenditures of this budget is $495.3 million. That's compared to the $783 million budget we had in fiscal 26, so it's down quite a bit. The majority of those decreases are in the capital improvement funds, and so we're getting to the end of some of those very large projects, so we're seeing a decrease in the amount being budgeted for capital projects. So general fund summary, it is balanced at $65.8 million, revenue over reoccurring expenditures. We do have $2.8 million in capital outlay, and that is outlined on one of the pages in the budget. It gives the detail of what that $2.8 million consists of, which leaves us a fund balance of $16.9 at the end of fiscal 27, and that is 26% fund balance of reoccurring expenditures. Our policy is 25, so we are above, and we would want to stay there. The rating agencies like to see you above your policy, so we will always shoot to be at 26-27%. In the general fund, on the revenue side, as we already talked about, total taxable assessed values has decreased by $65 million. We did gain new property of $321 million, which in doing the math, that means that existing property values decreased by $386 million. So just kind of telling the same story about the taxable values. On the sales tax side, we budgeted 3%, 4%. We are not hitting our mark on sales tax this year. I checked July for our fiscal year to date, and we were at 1.2% over last year. I will say July's year over year was 13% increase, so that was great. We'll see what August looks like and see if we're trending up. We may end stronger than we are projecting, but based on many months of data, we were very cautious about our projections. which means we're not calculating an increase in fiscal 27. We're just leaving it flat. Whatever our projections are for ending fiscal 26 is what our budget is for fiscal 27. If we do gain in sales tax, that will be very nice, and we will be able to use that for one-time capital purchases. I mean, we're going to continue to want to fund our vehicle and equipment replacement fund, so that will just be additional revenue that we'll be able to be flexible with. On the other revenue, we do have budgeted an amount coming from Travis County to support the emergency medical services increase contract of $600,000. We do have $521,000 coming from our tree escrow fund, and there were very specific things that the park department put into this budget that we are using that $521,000 for. And we also removed $240,000 of recreation fees out of the general fund because all of those fees are being captured in the Monarch Fund. This is just a look at our trends in sales tax. I mean, yes, we've had amazing growth in the last many years, but as you can see from about fiscal 24 on, we've pretty much had a flattening of growth in sales tax. General fund expenditure highlights. So we talked about the 17 positions being reduced in the general fund. 15 of those positions are going to the Monarch. So those are 15 full-time positions. There were 6 positions we gained from the utility fund in a reorganization of our engineering departments. And then there were 8 positions completely removed. All of those 8 positions were vacant. And so, nobody is being eliminated. We just were evaluating our vacancies and determined that these positions would not need to be funded in fiscal 27.
So I know you mentioned that you're in the process of doing an RFP for the health insurance, and that's always a big question mark until you get the data. So what happens if it comes in substantially higher than the 8%? What's the process y'all do?
So, like last year, we ended up negotiating an amount, and we ended up making a few adjustments in the actual benefit package to kind of get us to the 5% that we budgeted. So that was last year. We had only put in a 5%. This year, we put in an 8%. The last communication we received from our current provider was that we were at about 14%. That's prior to really negotiating. So I feel pretty comfortable with the 8%. If we had to negotiate a 1 or 2%, it would probably be based on the benefits that are being provided. And so on the operating side, this budget does include additional property insurance, additional utilities, all of the things that come with a new facility. We went out and did an RFP on janitorial services for all of our facilities. That's a big piece, especially when you talk about the new city hall and the new recreation center. We did include the increased contract with our emergency medical services. We also looked through all of the departments, and there was quite a bit of reductions in third-party contracts with consultants. And so we have a list of various reductions we were able to make, not just in one department, just basically across quite a few departments. And then we updated our cost allocation. Now it includes the Monarch because they're an enterprise. And since some of the positions in the engineering department came from the utility fund, all of that got factored into the cost allocation. So the utility fund is seeing a little bit of an increase in cost allocation participation going back to the general fund, but they also their personnel was reduced because of the positions that got moved. So it was really just where you're seeing the expense come out. On the capital outlay side, we are using available fund balance over the 25% at the amount of $2.8 million for one-time or capital purchases. A big piece of what is included in the 1.8 is the 1.6 million that's being transferred from general fund over to the vehicle equipment and replacement fund. And we kind of talk about that fund in a second. These are major events that are included in this budget in the general fund. So we just wanted to highlight those major events.
Yes, there are fireworks in it.
The red, white, and
I was
blue
waiting for y'all to
is
just have a
on the
slide with that
list.
one comment.
Yeah,
Let's circle that on.
it is on the list. So just highlighting some of the reductions in general fund. There were 8 positions eliminated. We did move 15 positions to the Monarch. There are still some recreation expenses in the general fund for just the months that we anticipate the old recreation center still being open. So, I mean, we do have some flexibility there. 9 months of that recreation expense was reclassed to the Monarch Fund. We looked at the numbers after the council meeting the other night because that was one of the questions that was asked. And there's about $881,000 that was removed from the general fund and moved over to the new Monarch Fund. So this is the property tax that flows into our debt service fund. We budgeted $33.2 million in 2026. Again, same explanation. Our projections are a little bit lower at 32.8, and our preliminary is actually 32.6. We are applying 4.85 million of available fund balance towards that tax rate calculation to keep the rate lower. So the calculated rate for 27 is 0.2826. Our current rate is 28.50. If we had not applied the 4.85 million, the debt rate would be 32.45. And so because we had the available funds, we wanted to make that calculation and keep that rate down. In our debt service fund, we're projecting revenues of 39.6, but reoccurring expenditures are at the 43.6. So you can see the net change. We're drawing down some of that fund balance. So we're projecting our ending fund balance to be at 5.3. On the Monarch Fund, we're still talking about this fund, and there's a lot of data and information that's gone into trying to create this budget. But I keep wanting to say out loud that it's a lot of estimates and it's a lot of projections. We actually are showing a deficit, which, as I communicated to council, once we get going and the facility opens and we actually start seeing memberships, we'll be able to refine some of our projections and estimates on this fund. And we may have to come back and ask for additional funds for this particular fund. It has built into it a $2.1 million that's supported by 4B dollars through the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. I feel like the revenue projection that Parks is providing is conservative, and so I'm hopeful that we will exceed those conservative estimates.
So remind me again when we're expecting not the soft, but the full opening. Like when do we think?
Open to the public mid-February.
February? Okay. So you'll have a better idea maybe March,
So I
April,
think
whether or not you're hitting some of those.
I think in October we will be able to finalize the fees.
Okay.
which is a big piece of what we're still working through. And they will start doing pre-sales. So at least we will start getting an idea, months before the facility actually opens of, how our memberships, may be panning out. So the pre-sales will be very enlightening, and will give us a good indication of kind of the direction that we're going. And that should start happening. The Parks Department was hopeful that at Deutschenfest they would be able to, have a booth and be, having those conversations. So it'll just depend on where we are with setting the fees.
But realistically, I mean, even though it's probably going to take a minimum of, 6 months plus to see what's really happened.
Right.
So really for the next fiscal year, you're not anticipating coming out of the red because you're still trying to get that handle on what's happening. So.
Right. And even, when you add 121 part-time, we're trying to make an estimate of how much that's really going to affect the budget. You're not going to have all of those positions filled all of the time. It's going to be a constant, replenishing of those positions.
So you might end up with additional vacancy savings based upon
Right.
their Thursday.
Right. And we're trying to estimate that, but, to what extent is the question. So on the utility funds, the proposed budget has revenue of 66.9. There's operating expenditures, and then there's also 32.5 million that's being transferred to the debt service fund. That is not the total amount of the debt service for utilities. It's the amount that's being supported by utility rates. So just want to point that out. We do have some money that we've already set aside in the utility debt service fund, and we are using some of that to make those debt payments along with some impact fees that we're transferring in there as well. So the net change is a 2.1. I will point out in fiscal 26, the 18.2 that's being transferred, a lot of that was us creating that debt service fund. And so that's not going to be a repeat of that type of transfer out of this fund. It was that initial transfer that we needed to make in order to create that debt service fund. The policy for this fund is 25% of fund balance over reoccurring expenditures. So I kind of talked to council about there's some built-in transfers into the capital projects fund from this fund. Those transfers won't be fully made unless we have seen our projections and know where we're going to land to keep this fund at the 25%. And so we have some flexibility in making those transfers or not making those transfers depending on how the actuals actually fall out in this fund. One of the things that is a little bit unpredictable with the water restrictions that we've had over the last 3.5 months is where we're actually going to land with revenue. And we've made some projections, but how close those projections are to reality, we'll just have to wait and see how they come out. On that fund, we did talk about the 10 positions reduced. 6 positions were moved to general fund, and 4 positions were completely removed from the budget. On the operating debt, we do have new plants coming online, so there were additional expenditures that had to be added for the Will Barger wastewater treatment plant and also the expansion of the water treatment plant. This fund also had some reductions in third-party contracts, so we reviewed each of the divisions in this fund and were able to see some reductions in those third-party contracts. On the capital side, they are using $828,000. The majority of that is being transferred to the Vehicle Equipment and Replacement Fund, which I believe I touch in a couple of slides. To go ahead and make some replacements of some vehicles that need to be, they're getting to end of life and we need to replace them. And then the 32.5 transfer to the debt service fund. Solid waste is pretty straightforward. We always balance this fund revenue over expenditures. We did do a new waste contract this year, and we've been able to lock our rates in for the next several years. And so there's no rate increase on the solid waste side. So there will be no increase in that rate. So in the vehicle equipment and replacement fund, this is only the second year that we've had this fund. So we're continuing to try to transfer into it. And on the replacement side for fiscal 27, general fund has 10 non-police vehicles and 15 police vehicles that will need to be replaced. And the water wastewater fund has 10 that need to be replaced.
What are the non-police vehicles?
They're just Public Works, Parks and Rec. I mean, any department that has vehicles that are at that end of life and need to be replaced. It could be any department other than police.
Do we acquire new police vehicles? With all the technology and advancements in technology, along with flock camera type automation?
What
Have we acquired any of those lately?
I mean, all of our vehicles come upfitted. I mean, the police vehicles all come upfitted with whatever equipment they require.
The new
I'm not sure.
specialty type.
I'm not sure what the equipment is that goes into these. I know that there's computers and cameras, and I know that there's radios. I just the lights. So all of that.
Pretty much the same for each vehicle. There's
Yes,
nothing,
for
like
police.
if there were special investigations or something, it would be fitted with something a little bit differently is where I'm going. You
Maybe.
understand? Something a
Yeah.
little more advanced. So that's what I was thinking along those lines of.
Yeah, I don't specifically know what they outfit the vehicles with, but yes, anytime they do quotes, it includes all the upfitting that's required for those vehicles.
But basically, when you're saying non-police and police, you're just saying that police department, you need to replace 15
Right.
vehicles, whatever
Mhm.
version that is,
Right.
whatever that looks like. And
I mean, some
non-police
could
is
be
across any other-
admin
Yeah.
that have no upfitting or very little upfitting, so it just depends on which vehicles are being replaced. On PCDCs, this is a budget that was approved by their board on July 15th, so it'll be brought forward in the city's budget. The next slide shows some of the assumptions. Their sales tax also, we're leaving them with 0% growth in the budget. Their budget does include the 2.1 million that's being that's supporting the gap with the new Monarch facility. They have a little bit of increase in economic incentives. They've had, I know, one agreement this year that has been added, and then they have 2 million in capital expenditures that relate to either the Nexus project or Innovation Hub or wet lab opportunities.
Are there any plans to increase the sales tax revenue?
I'm
Like in the
sorry?
future, are there any plans to increase the revenue? You know,
I mean, the hope with economic development is that we are able to attract new businesses that would help add to the sales tax.
right?
As far as specifically, I don't know of anything specific.
Okay, well, Tracy, going back to the 2.1 mil from PCDC, why that number? Why so small?
It was the calculated gap that was shown several months ago as far as like Parks and Rec had laid out a 5-year plan of what they thought they would need in that gap. And so the 2.1 was actually the highest year, and then it kind of tiered off from there depending on memberships and how the revenue came in. So it was a number that was provided at one time, and it just kind of stuck. And so it's the number that we've been using. It's the number that council approved for that first year.
So to be clear, like, it isn't just our Parks and Rec staff that does this. Like, we've hired professionals that have opened facilities like this across the country, and so they're basing their experience off of opening those facilities. Like, how much of your costs are you covering, years 1 through 5, They think we could probably get into the black, meaning fully cost recovery within 5 years, depending on the rates and our appetite for what how much we want to charge for memberships. But there is a number there where they believe that we could get to full cost recovery in 5 years, and so it'll taper off as you get more and more memberships. That gap will decrease over time, and so that initial gap is projected to be about $2 million.
So that 2.1 is just for the one-time deal?
Yeah, it's what they're guessing will not be covered by memberships in year one.
It's the first year. So PCDC is actually approved, or I think tonight, it's on their meeting
Okay.
tonight,
Okay.
to go ahead and approve the whole amount that was provided, which was like 4.6 or something. So the 2.1 was just indicated as the first year amount that was
okay, 'cause
needed.
I thought that would be a little bit small.
Might be
Yeah,
less,
yeah.
might be more.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
2.1 was
But
just
more
that
should-
1 year
Okay.
of amount, but there was more in the total request, yes.
Kind of like
Thank you.
looking at your next month's budget and saying, I need to move some money from my savings to cover this.
Mhm.
But we're doing it on an annual basis. and
Right.
We're looking at these larger funds.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I mean, and depending on how things
but those
fall
are
out,
simplified.
we might have to come back to PCDC and say, hey, year one, we're going to need a little bit more. Hopefully, we'll be able to carve some off at the end, just depending on how memberships go
Or not.
or not.
Just,
Yeah.
that's good. To me,
We're
that's a
just
good
going
amount.
to monitor it and see how it goes.
That's good.
This budget includes quite a few policies, and we were just calling out some changes. We have worked on a holistic financial management policy. So this is a new policy, and the purchasing policy just had a few updates. And I included a copy of last year's approved investment policy, but that is coming up for annual review and renewal on August 25th. So we will update that policy in the document before it comes to council for the final approval.
So I know I've seen several city council meetings where council members have been asking for, I guess, additional reporting or transparency on some of the financial matters. So does your fiscal management policy touch on any of that?
It speaks to what reporting we provide,
Okay.
Yeah. monthly, quarterly, annual,
Okay.
whether it's on the website, whether it's provided to council. I kind of made sure that it speaks to what we are currently doing.
So how does the request for public information actually affect the budget? When people want to know, the budget is available, but let's just say just some random citizen, does that fall under the management policy in regards to open records? Because everything is there, it's available, it's online. But what if someone has a question specifically about something that's not there? Because itemization is generalized for the most part in our budgets, right?
Right.
Because we can't see that the vehicle needs this, or this.
Right.
Or staff services or furniture, for the most part. So how, is that covered in there, how we handle that?
I mean, open records is covered in a completely different way, so I don't really have it in my financial policy, but I mean, open records requests go through the city secretary and are vetted that way.
So anything.
So if there's a report or something that has been produced that I can provide to an open records request, then we will do so.
And we have staff specifically for that? Besides the city secretary, there's no one that really.
I mean, open records requests just get assigned to a department,
And
and
there's a person.
we evaluate. I mean, there's nobody in my department that's assigned to open records. We just see what the open records request is, and we assign it to the most appropriate employee, maybe based on what functions they do.
Yeah, we do the same thing in our organization. It funnels through our legal.
Yeah.
They look at the requests. They'll send like an email. There'll be like 10 people on it. Who has the, who can
Yeah.
answer these questions? And then based upon that, and the laws actually lay out, like we have to do an estimate, like how much time is it going to take? Because if it takes over a certain amount of time, then whoever's requesting it has to pay the charges for it. So it's never the same people doing the same thing every time because it's not the same requests. Yeah.
Depends on the information requested.
Yeah,
And the department.
and the time, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those multiple citizen questions, so I sometimes have to ask the basics, even though I know about some of those. So that's why I have it written so this way with you, because some of these come from the public, which is what we're here to do, which is to represent. So some of the questions I have to ask because that is part of the transparency, and that is why I chose
Sure.
to submit the application to be a part of the representation. So yeah, I'm going to ask a couple more basic questions, which
Yeah,
you
we're at the
know
end
that
of our
I may know.
presentation. Yeah.
So it's going to be like with the vehicles. I love seeing the vehicles. I know what they are because they're always on duty around the neighborhoods. But a lot of people don't know. Like I was just saying, a lot of people still don't know that the Pflugerville School District is separate from the city.
Mm.
So in asking some of those basic questions that he may know that I know, I still got to ask him. And we
Yeah.
have such a wonderful committee here that answers the questions and breaks it down, which is really wonderful. Our citizens need more information, and that helps with the transparency, and that helps to lessen some of those requests because a lot of people don't understand that it's the time or just the process. We only see what's out there, and we only see what's fed through social media, and more people are hoping to become involved
Yeah.
locally with how the city processes its
Well-
governance of us and our needs.
We are at the end of the presentation. Just wanted to say, and on August 25th, we'll have a public hearing on the budget. So this presentation, slightly modified, will be presented again at that meeting. And then on September 8th is where we will bring back the budget, the tax rate, and we will also bring back the first reading and the master fee schedule. And so by the end of September 8th, we will have finalized the budget process and hopefully gotten everything approved.
Hopefully we'll have more citizens involved and engaged. Hopefully they'll see that it's important. Just pay attention. You can tune in and tune in quite well.
So if y'all have any questions, about the proposed budget or
I have two things that really aren't questions. On page 54, I believe,
Mhm.
of what was sent to us, the proposed budget, you have your accomplishments. And sometimes being in the city in the position you're in, you don't get recognized for those. People have no clue sometimes. The accomplishments that are done because we're living in it every day. We don't see the value of what some of you all do. And I appreciate that page, and always a thank you for that accomplishment, especially with the EMS and then with the contract reducing, the contractor reductions. Finding that is huge, because what do we do with all the analysis of things? Those are questions the community asks. How many more analysis and studies do we need for something? And not understanding that just the city council reviewing those studies is an action. So people don't know what actionable is sometimes in comparison to someone being physical, making a decision. Reading it, discussing it is an action. So sometimes just letting them know that the studies are there for that too. So again, I just wanted to say, really glad to see the list of accomplishments.
Some of my staff had to say, you need to cut that down. I need to fit it on one page.
Well, that's a good thing,
Yeah.
right? I don't have any more questions. Thank you.
I had a couple questions, unless you want to go. I know that there are some like retail and like restaurant projects kind of coming up on the horizon. I assume that would affect like our sales tax projections. So I know that we're at 0 right now. Is that something that we're just estimating for this year, and then we're expecting to invest more in some of the like the city, I forgot what it's called, but like the city square, and see some of those increase in the future, or is that something that's too far out on the horizon and we're not thinking?
I mean,
about
I
yet?
would be hopeful. I think that we were just being very conservative this year, and whatever we bring in over the 0% growth will help us next year. Normally, unless I'm seeing a large sales tax driver, I'm not going to go in and tweak the sales tax for a restaurant here and there. And I was not getting the information on any kind of like big box, sales driver that's really going to drive a large sales tax increase.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll have to look into it. I thought I had heard about some initiative where there was like a city incentive to get more retail or restaurants in, but I could be wrong about that. That was one question. I think second question was just around the major events. I was just wondering how, like, which fund these come from, how they're funded, which, like, where's the expense and the revenue,
They're
like, where are they calculated?
they're all general funds.
They're all general fund?
And I would say, without looking at the list, they are majority in the Parks and Recreation Department.
Okay, that would make sense. Is that something that's broken down at all? Like, I'm curious to see, like, the growth of Deutschen Fest year over year, for example. Is that something that you guys have available online, or is that something that you guys?
It would actually be, so we've talked about the transparency section of our budget online.
Yeah.
And so if you go to the transparency section, it is line by line. So line itemized. There is a line in our accounting software for festivals.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would be able to see that information. If you can't, let me know. But
Okay.
it should be on the transparency.
Yeah. Thank you. And one more, and then I'll be done. I promise. I saw the last thing I was just curious about. I'm not tapped in very well to the PCDC, but I noticed the capital expenditures for Nexus, the Innovation Hub. I assume that that's these non-operating expenses, like that 5.8 that we're estimating and the 2 million estimated next year.
So the majority of the 5.8 is actually a road project that they were doing. There
Okay.
was Impact Way extension and also the frontage off of 130 now that you can turn into the business park.
Oh yes, that's right.
And so
Okay.
those are some projects that are completing up this year, which is why you're not seeing the large. That was a large project for this year.
Mhm.
So the 2 million for next year really is just new opportunities.
Okay, gotcha. Which is and that's the wet lab, the
The
innovation
Nexus,
hub.
yep.
Okay, very cool. And it looks like we projected 10 and then we got to 5.8. Do you know what the difference was in those non-operating for this year?
There were some other monies set aside for other opportunities, which just did not happen.
Oh, okay.
And so we did not put them in as projections.
Awesome. Okay.
The only thing that was left was anything we spent on Nexus and the road projects.
Thank you.
And James, thank you for answering that question on the tiers, TERS. I'll get it eventually. I really appreciate that. We need to know more about that, honestly. I think it's really been great for the city. In my opinion, from what I can see.
I have a question on property taxes. You know, that's like our main source of revenue, right? So do we have any projections for the next, like, 10 years about how that revenue is going to look like?
We have a 5-year forecast, which will be included in the final budget book. It was not ready at the time of the proposed. But our projections are pretty conservative. I think right now we have plugged in like 3% growth year over year. So unless we know that, something new and big is coming, we're not putting that in there. We're just using historical trends to get that projection.
Okay, I just have a couple more. I know that you talked about some staff cuts, or that you're not filling positions. Are you concerned that that's going to affect any kind of service delivery by not having that, or is the fact that they were vacant kind of an indication that you were able to maintain that?
Yeah, so our philosophy has been, when we do get a vacancy, reevaluating the position, reevaluating the department to see if the position is still needed. Can we allocate responsibilities? I think all the departments with all of those vacancies went through that process. And so I don't think there's not an effect in service levels. It's really just, like for me, I had 3 purchasing people. At one time, we got up to 3 people in purchasing, but when I had a vacancy, then we reevaluated, like, where are we and what is our workload and what is our demand and can we do this with 2? And so that was the decision.
We are incredibly lean. Like when you look at the size of our organization compared to some of our peers, some of them have double what we have. Like we run super lean. I think the only area that I'm going to be watching closely is public works. I cut the equivalent of a crew over there. It's not sustainable. There are things that I'm going through a process of. I'm going through a process of recruiting a public works director, an assistant city manager over public works. I expect that leadership to come in and see areas where we can improve. And then that's where I'm going to have that service level discussion with council to say, here are the things that we're not doing because of the staff level that we're at. And if you want to improve services or do more preventive maintenance or those sorts of things, we need to fund that. We need to fund additional positions. So that'd be the only area where I'm looking really closely of like, we may have cut too deep on that.
That's kind of the gist of my concern is I know, people like to think that you just cut staff and that's how you get leaner government, but sometimes cutting staff actually makes things less efficient and increases the, you can't deliver on services that you need to.
That's right. With these, with such a big gap, that's really that's how you make the biggest impact. Your staff, most of your cost is your staff. Right. So as we look at those things, it's like, what are some things that we need to stop doing because we're removing a person from this department? Like, where do we need to trim back on our level of service? So we are doing that. I think we've been very intentional on the areas that will have the least amount of impact public facing, but it does require us to do more kind of in the background with less.
And so my second question kind of links to that. I know that you've said multiple times, Tracy, we've gone in with conservative estimates. We're trying to not assume a lot of things going on. And so I appreciate the fact that you're like trying to, I don't know, kind of make this, I don't want to say like bulletproof, but like let's assume hopefully not worst case scenario.
Right.
But not something that, you're not hoping to see a lot of revenue, even though it would be nice. And if they do open Kava, I'm going to be spending a lot of money.
Me too.
But I guess my concern is there anything else are there things that are out there that you feel like might be a risk? Like I know they're not doing anything on the animal shelter, although there's some other things. Like, is that one big facility, break away from creating a bigger issue with budget? Like, are there some risks that maybe
I think there's always,
highlighted?
I've even seen this year, there's always maintenance and repair things that come up that you're not projecting or prepared for. I think that we are covered in that way because we have been pretty conservative with our estimates. We put in a lot of estimates for these new facilities, and it was based on information we had at the time. We could go over those estimates very easily. So there's a few areas that we could certainly see a swing, but I think we're pretty good at looking at the facility, like looking at everything as a whole and being able to adjust when those things come up.
We do need to address pause. 100%.
Yep.
That facility is so terrible. Termites falling from the ceiling. It floods every time it rains. It's gross. We're putting money into having to tear out all the ceiling tiles and all the insulation. It's just rat infested. It stinks. So, and they're at capacity. It seems like now it's a couple times a year. Rhonda's saying, just take free adoptions because we're at capacity with our dogs, right? So that is another one where we'll be looking closely at ways that we could at least try to advance design on that facility, narrow in on a location to put that facility, and we got to figure that out.
Can PCDC help with that?
They can build infrastructure, so I think there might be some opportunities there.
Okay. I have a non-budget question. Are you guys having any questions?
No, go ahead.
It's a non-budget question. So Ms. Lauren and Mr. John, you're here. Do you have anything for us? Is there anything you shared? you're here and support Miss Tracy. How do you want to support Miss Tracy here? I'm like, what are we doing?
Well,
You
we're
can't just sit and be pretty. We need to know.
we are a lot of that behind the scenes.
Right.
Like what behind the scenes?
Go ahead, John.
So I'm the budget analyst. So I help the departments put together the budgets. The details of what goes on throughout the departments are more, they're the experts, right? I just help piece it together and build the document. But if sometimes I know something that, because I'm in the details a little bit with the departments, I might know some things. But generally, Tracy is also very on top of it, so she's answered everything that I could help with.
So do departments
You're gracious.
get their budgetary information all together to give to you? And then you
They put it in
send
themselves.
We have a software.
Right. So sometimes there may be a problem with what's going on with the software or something, and I can help with
like a
that.
database?
Not if that's what you call it. It's a software that helps us build the budgets. So they're just inputting it all, and then we review it after.
Okay.
I support Tracy and I do a lot of operations in the finance department. So I'm overseeing the payroll, the accounts payable, the utility billing team, some of the accounting on the general ledger, those things that are all behind the scenes but keeps all the departments running. And
One of those positions is always deserving of a medal. Well, thank you for answering.
All right.
Can you make a motion to, are we good? Jonathan?
Are you done, Kristen?
I think that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm done.
I'm making a
Adjourn.
motion to adjourn.
Do we have to do motions to adjourn?
sure.
Then I'll second.
All in favor?
Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you.